Welcome back,
Welcome back. Hello, family. Welcome to Hear Us Out. I am Renee.
Kyrie.
And again, as usual, I want to thank all of our subscribers. The first one up to our latest one. Thank you for being here and for hearing us out. And for all of the new listeners who are here who may have heard about us, thank you for tuning in and hearing us out.
Thank you for hearing us out. And today we will be continuing once
Mm-hmm.
again our discussion on Dune
Mm-hmm. By Frank
by
Herbert.
Frank Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a lot going on
Yes, that
as of
has
late
transpired since
as
our last.
transpired.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't really want to go too deeply into that
Right.
because that'll be what we end up talking about.
Right. So the
But
book. But yes, we have a conviction of Chauvin.
mhm.
We've had that to happen, and we've had multiple killings. You know, by police of a young 13-year-old here in Chicago, and then we had another killing of a young man. I think that was in Minnesota as well. I mean, it's just and then there was a killing of a young girl, 7 years old, in a drive-through at McDonald's. She was with her dad, and she was shot multiple times. Her dad was shot as well, and she died. So it's been quite hectic, since the last recording. But here we
Yeah.
are.
And I would say a very important thing about all this stuff is that you never, like I said, never feel like this is normal.
Right.
Never get used to
Mm-hmm.
this. It's important to, you know, remind ourselves of just how maddening
Right.
our world is and just the cost,
Mm-hmm.
of living it.
Right.
You know, we've said many times before, this isn't normal. This is a position that we have been forced into over
Right.
thousands of years,
Mm-hmm.
but it's never who we are. It's
Right.
never, what we're supposed to be, but the way things are supposed
Supposed
to
to
be.
be.
So
Right.
never get used to the violence.
Mm-hmm.
Never get used to that. Never allow yourself to go numb to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you do, then that's when.
Well, like Zora Neale Hurston said, that's when they will tell you that you enjoyed it. Basically, if you don't get upset about these type of things, that they'll lie and say that you enjoyed it. That was pretty much the
Mhm.
paraphrasing of it. So you don't want to do that.
It's
You
more
don't want to
that
be in that predicament, in that situation.
you don't want to allow yourself to become complacent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't want to allow yourself to make the mistake of allowing for the violence
Mm-hmm.
to dictate what the world
Right.
is. You know, never forget,
Yeah.
like I said before, that we are not monsters.
Mm-hmm.
We are failures.
Mm-hmm.
We are failing to live up to our own standards. And we've been failing for so long that we're trying to justify it.
Mm-hmm.
Failing for so long that we're trying to make it normal, trying to
Right.
make this who we are.
Mm-hmm.
But every single time something like this happens, every single time another person, whomever they may be,
Right.
you know, ends up dead as a result of the injustice of this world, you feel that ringing inside of you, in
Mm-hmm.
your chest, in your head, and it sticks with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because you know
Because
something
it is
is
wrong.
wrong.
Right.
And you know something is wrong because you know on an intuitive level that this isn't the way things are supposed to be, that this isn't right.
Right.
You know that. So never allow this world to rob you of that knowledge
Mm-hmm.
that you know something is
That's right.
wrong and
That's
that
right.
this is wrong. Because if you do, then you don't really have any access for changing it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you do, like I said, inadvertently leads
This is
back
it. That's
into
right.
this
That's right.
because you're creating from the exact same pool. You're
Mm-hmm.
pulling from the exact same, resources, and you're 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 allowing for this world to tell you what it is
Mm-hmm.
when this world really isn't anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's what we make of it.
Right.
And once you forget that agency, once you forget that it there is only madness,
right, and that's
and
what's
that's what we're in right
right
now.
now. Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
that's enough of that.
here we are.
Here we are
Here we are.
reading Dune.
Hmm.
In the midst of all of this, and I think it's very timely because Dune, like we've said many a times, especially in the last part where we talked about what we saw, like I said, Paul
Right.
actually begin to build
Hmm.
upon, like he had his conversation with Liet Keynes when he
Hmm.
talked about law,
Hmm.
the ultimate science, and how, the power of perspective and
Right.
stuff like that, and where, the power lies, where these things lie. you know, we are finally now starting to get into this
Right.
particular part of the
Hmm.
book where, Paul and Jessica are on the run. I think the last thing we read was about the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen,
Corner. Yeah.
you
Yes.
know,
Yes. Our
about
favorite foe.
how he has given, his nephew, the
Right.
Beast Raban,
Hmm.
full purview to squeeze Arrakis,
Hmm.
excuse me, of all of its wealth,
Right.
all of its resources, to one, recoup the exorbitant
Right.
amount of wealth that they expended
Right. Trying. Yeah.
defeating
Defeating the
House
Atreides.
Atreides,
Right.
and number two, to turn the planet's population against Beast Raban,
Right.
against his nephew, so he can replace him with his
On the
other
right.
younger nephew,
Right.
the Beast Raban's little brother,
Hmm.
Fade Ruther.
Right.
His plans within plans he
Right.
has going on here. But like that was the last thing we read. But really, the biggest thing was Paul and Jessica's conversation
Station.
with
Right.
Liet Keynes,
Hmm.
Liet Kynes, however you want to pronounce
Right.
it, and
Hmm.
understanding the, like I said, the science of law
Hmm.
and why these things are
Inhumane at times.
inhumane
Humane.
at
Right.
times. Yeah, which lie in contradiction to their origins,
Right.
which are uniquely human.
Hmm.
But yes,
Yes. So that's where we
so
are.
that's a little brief review,
Hmm.
and like I said, they are on the run.
Hmm.
The last time we saw them, they were having this conversation with
Hmm.
Liet, but if you've read the chapter, you know that the Harkonnens find them.
That's right.
They have to
Run.
run,
That's right.
and they get in their flying ship, the
Hmm.
Ornithopter, and they
Right.
fly straight into a sandstorm, and they're
Hmm.
presumed dead.
Right.
But they were able to navigate. They're still alive, and now
Hmm.
they're in the barren, deepest part of the desert.
That's right.
Where nothing is supposed to be alive,
Right.
and they're just betting on a prayer that they find the Freemen,
Right.
and they find someone that'll be able to take them in, and they can play up the missionary protectiva and try to
Hmm.
find a place there and give them a leg to stand on.
Right.
So this particular chapter that I'm pulling from now
Hmm.
is they have been found. They
Yes.
have been found by, if you remember from the first book, there was a Freeman introduced named
Hmm.
Stilgar.
Hmm.
You know, and he hasn't really been around for the entire story.
Yeah.
He's coming back up, in the middle of the book now, and they were on their own for a very long time,
Hmm.
running for their lives from the giant sandworms and all of the other things that are plaguing
Right.
in their particular region. They found themselves in this cave, and they're in this cave, and they are going deeper and deeper inside, but unbeknownst to them, they're being, which very shockingly, since their observational abilities are off the charts,
Right.
they are being spied on and
Yes.
followed,
Right.
and then they're ambushed
Hmm.
by, Stilgar and his troop,
Hmm.
his troop of freemen, and they say that they are going to, they kill him and take their water.
That's right. Basically right.
They're trespassing
Yep.
on Freeman
Right.
territory. They're in
Yeah,
this
about to get this
cave,
right.
so they're like, all right, just kill them and take their water.
Hmm.
But Liet was able to get a message out to Stilgar,
Hmm.
who is the leader of
Of the freedom.
Liet.
Well, yeah.
Now that lead,
Yeah.
so got a message out.
Hmm.
So Stilgar is on the lookout
Hmm.
for some wayward souls
Right.
wandering in areas they're not supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout this entire encounter, you know, they are Jessica and Paul are shocked
Mm-hmm.
that one someone is able to catch them off guard,
Right.
and that the way they have this casual aura of death about them, that
Yeah.
they'll just kill you and take
Yeah. Yeah.
that's just who
Yes.
they are.
Yep.
So they're very taken aback by this.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And this isn't a particular chapter that we're going to read today, because later on it's a thing that I want to get into. But
Mm-hmm.
I just want you to know that they were able to. Jessica used her abilities
Right.
because they were going to kill her especially.
Yes.
They were going to kill her especially. They were thinking that Paul might be useful to them,
Right.
and stuff like that. But Jessica is
Yes.
dead weight.
Yes.
And we know, like I said, the Freemen have the culture of the knife. They cut it off and say that it's it.
Yeah.
So if you can't provide and you can't give to these people,
Mm-hmm.
then that's it for you.
Right.
So Jessica immediately had to prove herself, and Jessica took down Stilgar,
Mm-hmm.
the leader of
Right.
of these Freemen. And then Stilgar, very shocked, like man, if you said that
Yeah.
you had those types of abilities,
These,
I wouldn't even
yeah. Right. So what do you mean all that?
consider
Right.
killing
Right.
you. And Paul, he ran into an alcove
Mm-hmm.
and was confronted by a Freeman named Jameis, which we're going to get into later on. And he was able to
Take him.
disarm
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Jameis,
Right.
and he
Right.
retreated into the rocks and all this
Right.
stuff. And then after the confrontation, which is what we're going to get into
Mm-hmm.
now, but after the confrontation, Jessica was able to create a little
Yeah.
space for them, leveraging the missionaria protectiva,
Right.
leveraging this myth
Mm-hmm.
among them, and she was able to, demonstrate their use and show that
Right.
they may be those prophesied
Right.
ones that
Right.
they're waiting for.
Been waiting for. Correct.
But
Correct.
now, since they've been accepted into
Mm-hmm.
on a cursory
Yeah,
level,
on cursory level
they've
with
been accepted
the Freeman. Mm-hmm.
into Stilgar's troop.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to see what I really want to read is a little conversation between Jessica and Stilgar.
Okay.
Once they have found their little place
Mm-hmm.
inside of them, and I really like this conversation between the two, because there are many battles going on. Not all of them purely physical. This is another one of those verbal
Right.
battles that are
Mm-hmm.
going on, where Jessica has to rely on her ability to be
Mm-hmm.
able to suss out what people are meaning, to be able to find a way.
Right.
Because everything that she says, everything that they do, both her and her son Paul, if they do not play their cards right,
Right.
they're going to be out of luck.
That's right. The knife. Right.
They won't be able to
Right.
survive this encounter. They may be
Right.
able to take a few of them, but not
Right.
all of
All of
them.
them.
And if they're cast out by the Freemen, then
Mhm.
there's really nothing that they
You
can
can
do.
do. Right.
So this is one of those, everything's extremely delicate. They're
Mhm.
choosing their words very wisely.
Delicate is a good way of
You
saying
know,
tense. Right.
Yeah. So I want to read this little conversation, this little interplay between Stilgar and Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So let me get to it. Let's see. All right. Let me see. Hold up. I might be a little ahead. No, but this is it. All right. That is home, Stilgar said. We will be there this night. He stared across the basin, tugging at his mustache. My people stayed out overlate working. That means there are no patrols about. I'll signal them later, and they'll prepare for us. Your people show good discipline, Jessica said. She lowered the binoculars, saw that Stilgar was looking at them. They obey the preservation of the tribe, he said. It is the way we choose among us for a leader. The leader is the one who is strongest, the one who brings water and security. He lifted his attention to her face. She returned his stare, noted the whiteless eyes, the stained eye pits, the dust-rimmed beard and mustache, the line of the catch tube curving down from his nostrils into his steel suit. And I don't know if I've touched on this earlier, but Dune is overflowing with spice, which
Right.
is just like I said, this geriatric drug.
Yeah.
And when you have so much spice in your system, your eyes
You're right. It changes.
become blue.
Mm-hmm.
There's no whites, no pupils. They just
Mm-hmm.
become blue.
Right. Totally. Mm-hmm.
These total blue eyes. So you see a lot of Jessica and Paul who are very unused to that,
Mm-hmm.
really taking note of these blue, whiteless
Mm-hmm.
eyes. So that's just one of the side
Mm-hmm.
effects of
Of
overabundance
a
of the
spice. Mm-hmm.
spice. So yeah, have I compromised your leadership by besting you, Stilgar? She asked. You did not call me out, he said. It's important that a leader keep the perspective as true, she said. Isn't a one of those sandlights I can't handle, Stilgar said. When you bested me, you bested us all. Now they hope to learn from you, the weirding way. And some are curious to see if you intend to call me out. She weighed the implications. By besting you in formal battle? He nodded. I advise you against this because they not follow you. You're not of the sand. They saw this in our night's passage. Practical people, she said. Sure enough, he glanced at the basin. We know our needs, but not many are thinking deep thoughts now this close to home. We've been out over long arranging to deliver our spice quarter to the free traders of the cursed guild. May their faces be forever black. Jessica stopped in the act of turning away from him, looked back up into his face. The guild? What has the guild to do with your spice? It's Liet's command, Stilgar said. We know the reason, but the taste of it's ours. We bribed the guild with a monstrous payment in spice to keep our skies clear of satellites, and such that none may spy what we do to the face of Ericus. So Paul was right.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
She weighed out her words, remembering that Paul had said this must be the reason Arakine's skies were clear of satellites. And what is it you do to the face of Ericus that must not be seen? We change it, slowly but with certainty, to make it fit for human life. Our generation will not see it, nor our children, nor our children's children, nor the grandchildren of their children. But it will come. He stared with veiled eyes out over the basin. Open water and tall green plants and people walking freely without steel suits. So that's the dream of this Liet Keynes, she thought, and she said, bribes are dangerous. They have a way of growing larger and larger. They grow, he said, but the slow way is the safe way. Jessica turned, looked out over the basin, trying to see it the way Stilgar was seeing it in his imagination. She saw only the grayed, mustard stain of distant rocks and a sudden hazy motion in the sky above the cliffs. Ah, Stilgar said. She thought at first it must be a patrol vehicle, then realized it was a mirage. Another landscape hovering over the desert sand, and a distant wavering of greenery, and in the middle distance a long worm traveling its surface, with what looked like Freeman robes fluttering on its back. The mirage faded. It would be better to rise, Stilgar said, but we cannot permit a maker into this basin. Thus we must walk again tonight. Maker, their word for worm, she thought. She measured the import of his words, the statement that they could not permit a worm into this basin. She knew what she had seen in the mirage, Freeman riding on the back of a giant worm. It took heavy control not to betray her shock at the implication. I'm going to stop here.
Mm-hmm.
And, what she seen, because just before this happened, Paul and Jessica were running for their life
Right.
from a worm.
That's right. The
You
nice
know,
the sandworm.
these giant,
This
giant,
monster.
monolithic creatures.
Right.
They were almost killed by one on multiple occasions.
Right.
And before they ran into Stilgar, that's what they were doing. They were
Right.
running from this worm. So
Worm.
the
Mm-hmm.
idea that the Freemen have such a control over these creatures that they can, permit their
Right.
travel and also be able to
Ride
ride
them. Right.
these things
Right.
is almost like it's very galling to her. It
Mm-hmm.
took a lot of her control to cover up her shock
Right.
that they, have that type of power.
Mm-hmm.
Because these sandworms they call them the old dragon.
Mm-hmm.
They have these poisoned cryonite teeth,
Right.
and they smell of the spice
Mm-hmm.
in their mouth, and they are heat.
Right.
They have, when you stand up close to one and you feel inside there's
Mm-hmm.
just this heat
Right.
emanating from it, like from a
And like the
forge.
simplest, slightest touch of that tooth, because they use
They
that
use
as
it.
a knife.
Yeah,
So the
lightest
slightest
touch
of that
is
will
enough
kill
to
you.
kill you.
Right.
So these are very dangerous creatures.
Right.
And they tend to go where they please.
Right.
They do what they, but they are animals,
Right.
so you can kind of see their pattern. But you can't. The idea of riding one
Right.
and being able to permit their travel,
Mm-hmm.
control where they go, is very, very galling,
Right. Startling.
startling to
Right.
her. So she has to re
Right.
recenter herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first time I was reading
Right.
this, and I was like,
Say what?
"What?"
What?
You know. But all of this is going to come to a head
Uh-huh.
later on.
Right.
So let me continue.
Mm-hmm.
She measured the import of his words, the statement that they could not permit. Oh wait, no, I read that.
Mm.
We must be getting back to the others, Stilgar said, else my people may suspect I dally with you. Some already are jealous that my hands tasted your loveliness when we struggled last night into Tuano Basin. That will be enough of that, Jessica snapped. No offense, Stilgar said, and his voice was mild. Women among us are not taken against their will. And with you, he shrugged, even that convention is required. You will keep in mind that I was a duke's lady, she said, but her voice was calmer. As you wish, he said.
Oh,
It's time to seal off this opening, to permit relaxation of stills with discipline. My people need to rest and comfort this day. Their families will give them little rest on the morrow. Silence fell between them. Jessica stared out into the sunlight. She had heard what she had heard in Stilgar's voice, the unspoken offer of more than his countenance. Did he need a wife? She realized she could step to that place with him. It would be one way to end conflict over tribal leadership,
mm-hmm.
female properly aligned with male. But what of Paul then? Who could tell yet what rules of parenthood prevailed here? And what of the unborn daughter she had carried these few weeks? What of a dead duke's daughter? And she permitted herself to face fully the significance of this other child growing within her, to see her own motives in permitting the conception. She knew what it was. She had succumbed to that profound drive shared by all creatures who are faced with death, the drive to seek immortality through progeny. The fertility drive of the species had overpowered them. Jessica glanced at Stilgar, saw that he was studying her, waiting. A daughter born here to a woman wed to such a one as this man. I mean, there's a siren out there.
Yeah,
And say,
welcome to the city.
yeah, we live in the city. Things are happening. What would be the fate of such a daughter? She asked herself. Would he try to limit the necessities and the Bene Gesserit must follow? Stilgar cleared his throat and revealed then that he understood some of the questions in her mind. What is important for a leader is that which makes him a leader. It is the needs of his people. If you teach me your powers, there may come a day when one of us must challenge the other. I would prefer some alternative. There are several alternatives, she asked. To say Adina, he asked. Our Reverend Mother is old. Their Reverend Mother.
Right.
Before she could probe this, he said, I do not necessarily offer myself as a mate. This is nothing personal, for you are beautiful and desirable, but should you become one of my women, that might lead some of my young men to believe that I'm too much concerned with pleasures of the flesh, and not enough concerned with the tribe's needs. Even now they listen to us and watch us. A man who weighs decisions, who thinks of consequences, she thought. There are those among my young men who have reached the age of wild spirits, he said. They must be eased through this period. I must leave no great reason around for them to challenge me, because I would have to maim and kill among them. This is not the proper course for a leader if it can be avoided with honor. A leader, you see, is one of the things that distinguishes a mob from a people. He maintains the level of individuals to a few individuals, and a people reverts to a mob. I'm making a face, showing that the special emphasis
Right.
on that, because we've talked
Talked
about
about
that
that,
many a
yeah.
times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, dichotomy between a people
Right.
and the individuals and stuff like that, and it's good to see that once again reflected, in this, and this is where I say that a lot of the comparison between us
Right.
and
The Freemen.
Freeman
Mm-hmm.
begin to break down
Mm-hmm.
because you know there is no unity
Mm-hmm.
amongst us,
Mm-hmm.
amongst any people,
Right.
especially black people.
Mm-hmm.
We there's a common experience. We all
Yes.
experience racism and oppression, but like I said before, pain does not breed a unity. There
You're
is
right.
no
Correct.
unity amongst
That's
us.
right.
We have all not decided what it
Means.
means to be black
Right.
and to live with this experience. We all just kind of live with it in
Right.
any way we can,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But the Freemen are unified. They are
Mm-hmm.
unified behind this dream. They are unified behind the ideals of what it means to be a freeman.
Right.
For people to accept that level of danger and that level of death in their
Mm-hmm.
society, it's easy for them to become barbarous, but they are not, barbarians.
Right.
They are not, animals,
Mm-hmm.
just living on this instinctual basis. There is a culture here.
Mm-hmm.
There is a complexity, to these people, beyond, you know,
Right.
just murdering each other that shows that they they are living in such an environment.
Mm-hmm.
They are living under Harkonnen rule, which they have been living under for a very long
Long
time,
time. Right. Mm-hmm.
which they're returning to. Very, because the Atreides, the Duke is dead,
Mm-hmm.
and the Beast Raban is there.
Right.
So they are once again being hunted,
Mm-hmm.
and not to mention that they are living in the harshest environment in the entire Imperium.
Right.
So this mentality that they
Mm-hmm.
have, the mentality of the knife, this casual, relationship with death
Mm-hmm.
is one of necessity.
Right.
They have to have this particular
Mm-hmm.
relationship. They have to have this culture because if they do not,
Mm-hmm.
they will be obliterated.
Right.
They will be
That's right.
destroyed.
Sure.
You know, so they have that, but that's which as we're seeing in Stilgar now is denoting a culture, you know, a culture beyond that,
Mm-hmm.
one that is composed of it, but hints at something a bit deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I've said many a times, that myth lives with these people. There is a myth and fate and magic. There's an animus amongst these people. That shows why they were so heavily you know they were so heavily, would you say, induced
Mm-hmm.
with the missionaria protectiva. Why there is so much
Mm-hmm.
myth amongst these people? Because it is necessary. It is more necessary than the knife. Is this myth,
Right.
is this dream that they have?
Right.
Because if they did not have that, there would be no unifying cause.
Right.
Then it would just be casual violence
Right.
and nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And Jessica's beginning to have a sense of that
Mm-hmm.
these people, especially in Stilgar,
Right.
who, being the leader, kind of exemplifies the best traits of these people, that they are perhaps the optimal people.
Yeah.
They
Great
understand
standards. Mm-hmm.
the cost of living,
Mm-hmm.
the cost of having to, exist
Right.
as a hunted people.
Right. The
You
cost of
know,
every drop of water, like
yeah,
of
the
everything.
literal cost, yeah,
Right.
of water.
Mm-hmm.
Water is a luxury to these
Mm-hmm.
people. And they dream of a day when it's not,
Right.
when it is freely available.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I've often talked about, in our world, that
Mm-hmm.
the biggest thing, that I love life,
Mm-hmm.
but I hate living.
Mm-hmm.
I hate what we've made that into, in
Hmm.
harkening back to, in how we started off our
Right.
conversation with, all
All
this
of this.
death and
Right.
stuff, and that, this is
Mm-hmm.
commonplace. It's not normal, but it
Right.
is common.
Commonplace. Correct.
It's very common,
Mm-hmm.
and that we live in a world that just tells you that that's what this
Mm-hmm.
is, and that to like continue
Mm-hmm.
with that,
Right.
that people like children have been killed,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that a police officer was held accountable is
Right.
a giant event,
Yes. Literally. Yes. Mm-hmm.
and that all of these things are happening, and you just, what I don't understand in us is that this perseverance, quote unquote, this idea, like I said, of the struggle, and the fact that we just keep going, I
Mm-hmm.
think is a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the things that the Freemen don't have,
Right.
because they are living in their reality.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, like I said, we're delusional.
Mm-hmm.
We keep, like, our world is dying, yet we don't act like it.
Right. We don't respond that way.
We don't
Right.
respond that way.
Mm-hmm.
Our government is corrupt,
Mm-hmm.
and is corrupt at worst and effectual at best.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see it all over the place, and not to mention the crime and madness
Mm-hmm.
just
That's just running
that's just
rampant.
running
Period.
rampant
Right.
even without.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, but no one is acting like
These things are
that
happening.
these things
Things
are
are happening.
happening. One of the things that I often said, like, I would love if all the musicians stopped making music.
Yeah. Remember, we talked
If
about that
all
one
the
time before. Yeah.
directors stopped
Stop making.
making
Mm-hmm.
movies, if all the comedians stopped making jokes,
Mm-hmm.
if everything stopped,
Mm-hmm. No entertainment.
no
Period.
entertainment,
Uh huh.
that everyone just stopped going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone just stopped
Stop.
living
Mm-hmm.
like this and act like we are on a planet that is dying.
Mm-hmm.
Act like there's something is wrong and make that the point. Like, we aren't going to make any music.
Right.
We aren't going to pay any bills, go to any job we until we address
Right. This
this
plastic,
this
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 pollution.
problem that
Right.
we
Right.
have. Like,
Whatever.
I
Right.
often say that, with the Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
No one wanted either of these people.
Right.
We didn't want Trump. We
Right.
didn't want Clinton.
Right.
We didn't want none of them.
Right.
But they were like, well, you just gotta choose between one of the others. Like, no, we don't.
Don't. We don't
No,
have
we
to do
don't.
that. Right.
We, as a people, could have said, you know what, we don't like either of these people, and so, you know what, we're just not going to have a president.
Right.
We have to send. We have to. So until the Republicans and or Democrats can
Mm-hmm.
provide a candidate that we, as the people,
Right.
actually, you know, want
Mm-hmm.
or are comfortable with being an alternative to one another.
Right.
Instead of just these two things that we just don't want.
Right.
Until these two parties can provide that for us, we just not go to that. We could say that.
Right.
These rules aren't. I said God did not come down and say this is how the world is going to be.
Right.
We chose this.
That's right.
So it should have never even come to this.
Mm-hmm.
There's global warming. Our planet is literally suffocating to
Mm-hmm.
death. We know that this is happening. We've known since the 70s.
Yeah. We've been knowing for a minute,
We've
for
known
decades, right?
For so long that our planet is dying, and yet we just keep going.
Right.
And we think that that's a virtue.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's not. Not if you keep operating in delusion. If you're not acting like it. It's like the Freemen know what they're operating under.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the type of complexity and the type of beauty that you can get from a people that are not delusional.
Right.
And so even though they have all rallied around a dream, that's what keeps them moving forward. Right. But the decisions that they're making in the here and now is based off of their predicament as it is here and now.
Right.
They want to make it have a point outside of their own survival. That's where the dream comes in.
Right. Because he talks about
that.
Right.
But so you have a people like mentality of the knife. And Jessica knows she was on her life was on the on the other side.
Right. Right.
That's why she had to demonstrate her usefulness, her weirding ways, as Stilgar put it. But that's not us. Right. So that's where it falls apart. We're delusional. We keep on living. Like I said, we keep falling and then nothing changes. Like, Donald Trump was elected president and there were new albums. Beyonce put out another song, new movies, right. New stuff. And it's like, there's a fascist in office. Right. And we all just kept going. Right. We didn't treat it like it was supposed to be treated. Like, our world is dying, is suffocating. Millions of people are going to die. Even more are going to be displaced. You think the pandemic is bad now? Wait until there's a giant environmental shift. Right. And the things that used to keep all of these diseases on the orrery are gone. And now you're confronted with this throng of people, and you have less of a buffer between you and the wild, so these diseases can't die out there anymore. They can't just stay in the bats or in the rats.
You're not frozen in the tundras and things of that nature, because there is no more tundra.
You're going to get more diseases. You're going to get more pandemics. You're going to get more of these things. Right. As the environment shifts in such a radical way. And it's like,
that's not a conspiracy.
Yeah, that's straight up science. We've known this for a long time. And it's like, why is it that we aren't acting like humanity's at stake? Like, why are we still just living and going about? Like, I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it.
Right.
Like, why are we? That's maybe it's just like why are we going out to eat?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we,
Partying and
partying
right.
and acting like we have time for this?
Right.
That we have reached some type of place that allows us this space.
Right.
If we were operating, you know,
Like the Freemen.
like the Freemen, like under no delusions, then
Right.
maybe we could create
Right.
that time and space for us.
Mm-hmm.
We can relax, steal
Mm-hmm.
supervisions, and give ourselves a break.
Right.
But
That's not where we
that's
are.
not where we are.
Right.
That's not where we are, and
Mm-hmm.
it is so galling to me to have to live in this world. Like, and it you feel like you're being gaslighted because you think
Yes.
there's something wrong
Exactly.
with you.
You.
Like, is there
Right.
something wrong with me?
Right.
Am I crazy for
Right.
feeling like the walls are closing in and
Right.
that we don't have time for this?
Right.
And it's like, no, you're
No.
not.
No.
Just the
Correct.
world is crazy. We think that persevering, that that's I'm like that
I
because
talk
people
about
look
that
at
all the
that and
time.
say that
Right.
like, well, there's always going to be another election. It's like, yeah, that's the problem.
Right.
There's always going to be another one.
Right.
The system is broken, and
Right.
there's always going to. That's not a good thing.
Right. You don't want that, right?
We went from Trump to Biden. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing.
Right.
Why are we acting? Why? And we just
Keep
keep
going.
going. We just keep going. At some point, we have to
Stop.
operate in reality. Like, at some
Stop.
point, you would think,
Yeah.
but evidently not.
Right. We
You
keep
know?
thinking that there's something in this struggle, like in this, we just have to keep going. I'm like, where and why? Why are we doing this? At no point, no one wants to just simply
Mm-hmm.
stop. And so,
And
yeah,
yeah,
we
so
definitely like the
yeah,
Freeman
so
because, yeah.
it's refreshing to
Mm-hmm.
me to see like a people whom I see like who have this casual air of death and brutality about them,
Mm-hmm.
but have this have who are operating without any delusions,
Right.
who operate as like that they've been implanted with the myth. They
Mm-hmm.
need a dream,
Right.
you know. That's how in the moment they are,
Right.
and that their leader recognizes even in that,
Mm-hmm.
how they fall short, and how this casual air brutality can,
Right.
shoot them in the foot at some
Mm-hmm.
point, you know, and that you have to choose your moments wisely, and you have to know what it is you're cutting off,
Correct. Right.
and it's really exemplified, and that's I find that extremely refreshing
Mm-hmm.
for people to just like to be that aware
Mm-hmm.
of just how in danger they are,
Mm-hmm.
and have been able to create and exist
Existing.
from that,
That's right. Mm-hmm.
you know, and are now with the introduction of Paul and Jessica are rapidly moving
Mm-hmm.
toward not being in danger to becoming the danger.
Right.
Because there is an animus amongst these people, like we said, the jihad and all these things. You know, there is an animus amongst
Mm-hmm.
them that is shifting
Yeah.
them that is shifting, galactic balance. And soon enough, people will be running from them.
Oh
You
yes.
know,
Oh yes.
and that's like I said, it's not a good thing.
Right.
You know, Paul doesn't want it,
Right. But
but
here,
that's the
yeah,
only
yeah,
thing. That's
that's.
the only thing that's left for them now. That's the only thing left for the galaxy. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, we exist in this casual brutality.
Right.
The Harkonnens, the Atreides, the entire galaxy has this casual inhumanity about it. There's a brutality in the Freemen, but there is a very prevalent streak of humanity in them.
Mm-hmm.
That Jessica and Paul note as being refreshing. Like, they don't have to, worry about poison snoopers. They don't have to worry about
Right.
poison
Right.
because everything is so heavily inlaid with the spice and just
Mm-hmm.
how the people operate that you don't have to worry about these things.
Mm-hmm.
Dune is making them honest, and it's slowly cutting away the artifice of the
Mm-hmm.
society that they used to live in.
Correct. Yeah.
You
That's right.
know, but because the society that they used to live, like it is an inhuman one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a one that kills fathers, and
That's right.
it's a one that kills children. That
Right.
makes them, puts children. Because
Yeah.
Paul is a child, is 15.
Right.
It puts them in that
Type of
type of
danger. Yeah.
type of danger.
Right.
In that type of situation.
Mm-hmm.
It's very inhuman the world that they're living in. And violence begets violence.
Mm-hmm.
We are causing this storm. It's in the sense, since Paul is all of us, he especially is feeling the consequences of these actions and knowing that this jihad is coming.
Mm-hmm.
But this response is one that we are all leading into,
Mm-hmm.
this endless battle, because we're delusional and we're all acting under this, like this artifice.
Right.
We're all lying, and we're all doing these things, acting like being emperor matters. That the positioning of one house against the other house and all these things matter.
Mm-hmm.
When in the grand scheme of things, they don't.
Right.
There are only one truly human people in this galaxy, and it's the Freemen. And Paul is being implanted upon them, and now he has to unleash this very inhuman dream amongst them. This very inhuman thing of the jihad,
Mm-hmm.
which is death and suffering. Well, it's inhuman to people of who don't like death and suffering,
Mm-hmm.
but to a society that runs on it, it is the only logical conclusion.
Right.
And when you see people, when you look at people like Stilgar and hold them up against, like people like, the Baron Harkonnen.
Ugh. Yeah.
The Baron Harkonnen, his particular brand of evil can only exist inside of that delusion,
Right.
inside of that art. He's a giant, fat, man. He could not, literally physically, could not exist in the Freeman world.
That's right.
He can't.
No way. They'd be waiting for him.
It's like he wouldn't, like he can't, like he's
He can't even
giant,
move,
bulbous figure. If he was amongst the Freemen, he wouldn't even be able to be that, grotesquely overweight.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like,
right. he physically could not exist the way that he does. Because the Freemen, for their dreams, are less delusional than the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
But they're striving to be a part of a world that is fatally broken.
Right.
And then all of it.
I guess that's their flaw.
That's what they have to.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The lesson's coming to all of us.
Yeah.
And then listen, it is a terrible one.
Mm-hmm.
I say I'm afraid for us.
Mm-hmm.
I have to call myself a coward. Because I'm afraid. I'm afraid of a lot of things, and it's like I think that. And I don't. When I call myself a coward, I don't mean it in a pejorative way.
Right.
I mean, because I am ruled by my fears,
mm-hmm.
and I'm just acknowledging that.
Right.
I'm afraid for us.
Right.
I'm afraid for the world that we're living
in.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the rest of us are delusional for not being afraid.
Right.
We think that it makes us tough. Right. I mean, a lot of I've grown up, like I said, I've grown up in a lot of bad neighborhoods. So there's always people who's like, I'm not afraid to die. I'm not afraid of all this stuff. It's always that stuff.
Right.
And it's like, well, you're not afraid to die. Well, congratulations.
Right.
You're not afraid to die.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure like you have families, you have people who are afraid that they're going to have to bury you.
Yeah.
Because when you're dead, the consequences of your actions don't go with you.
Right.
We all have to live with
it. Right.
As a matter of fact, you don't have to live with them anymore because you're dead.
Right.
But all the problems stay here.
Mm-hmm.
We all know what it means to lose. And some of us think that makes us tough because we've lost.
Right.
We've lost things, and we have this relationship with death. We're not afraid of death. Mm-hmm. We're not afraid of loss.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like you may think that you can, but you accepting these things mm-hmm. are causing these things.
Right.
I accept death. I accept loss as
mm-hmm.
reality, but I have learned to fear them.
Right. I don't want to lose. Right. I don't want those things.
Why aren't you afraid of loss?
Right.
Why aren't you afraid of death?
Mm-hmm.
Because when your fears helps you to avoid things.
Right.
Maybe if you were afraid of these things, we can create a world
right.
that didn't run on them.
Mm-hmm.
But we have, we're delusional.
Right.
All of us are delusional. We're all killing in line.
Right.
And we're adding towards this momentum because even though we understand loss and death and
Mm-hmm.
suffering, we aren't afraid of them,
Mm-hmm.
and we think that if we were to inflict the losses and death on them,
Mm-hmm.
that it wouldn't be this way,
Right.
you know. And it's like just
That's.
this, we're constantly feeding into this.
Mm-hmm.
We have not learned to be afraid
Mm-hmm.
of these things. What we're afraid of stupid stuff.
Right.
We're afraid of not having enough money. We're afraid of of being shown up.
Mm-hmm.
We're afraid of not being able to compete, of being seen as less than.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the entire metric of discerning these things
Mm-hmm.
is based off of, I can't say flaw,
Right.
but I can say wrong,
Right.
on wrong logic.
Mm-hmm.
If you are basing your entire world on being able to defeat the people around you and defeating the forces arrayed against you, then your logic fallacy, the gap lies in is that once everything becomes a part of that battle, everything becomes a part of that struggle. But there are many realities that lie outside of it.
Right.
Battle colors your perception. You can't even see the world anymore because you're so used to seeing things as this net loss gain and playing this battle constantly, this
Mm-hmm.
game in your head of values, of strategy. But that's not the way things are supposed to be, obviously, because we know something is wrong.
Right.
We get that call every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And every single time another one of these tragedies happen, we feel something is wrong, you know? And yet we constantly find ourselves back in this position.
Mm-hmm.
We constantly find ourselves here over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to just wonder, if you're fighting to exist in this world, then you, if if you're fighting to exist in this world, then all you're ever going to get is the fight.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this world
Right.
is. It is
All you
conflict.
all you're
It
ever going to
is
get is
it
this.
is jihad.
Right. This is what you're going to
It
get.
is jihad. It is the endless eternal war.
Mm-hmm.
War with each other.
Mm-hmm.
War with ourselves.
Right.
War with nature.
Right.
War with the universe.
Mm-hmm.
War against everything.
Right. You're going to have to find someone to war with.
You're fighting and
Right.
fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Arguing this, this conversation, this thing that you don't even know you're having,
Mm-hmm.
because you're so caught up in
Right.
you got your hand in the box, but you can't see the needle at your neck.
Right.
You're so caught up in what the fight is to you that you can't see what the fight is to it, to
Mm-hmm.
itself,
Right.
what you're feeding into. You can't see the forest or the trees. We're so delusional,
Mm-hmm.
and we just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
We just keep going. We're on this treadmill, and we just keep going, and it frustrates me to no end.
Mm-hmm.
It frustrates me to no end that we have not learned to fear death and suffering,
Mm-hmm.
and that we just accept it.
Mm-hmm.
We see it like, oh, but that's a shame. But you go to work the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Society keeps going. The music keeps getting pumped out. There's another special.
Right.
Dave Chappelle made another thing,
Right.
and it's like these things keep going because
Right.
we aren't treating them like there's something wrong.
Right.
We say that there's something wrong, but everything we do to combat them is just some variation of being wrong.
Right.
We're all operating in wrong. And I said all that to
That's
say
safe. Right.
that the Freemen are a people of a dream,
Mm-hmm.
but not of a delusion.
Right.
Their mentality is one that they need, and they know that it is costing them.
Mm-hmm.
They know what it is costing them. They want to escape it. That's why, Jessica and Paul have been given such leeway, because they know they
Mm-hmm.
just might be the ones, that can take them away from this.
Mm-hmm.
But they know that as long as they are living in it, as long as they are living in it, then these are the people that they have to be.
Right.
So, and so, yes, there is this casual aura of death about them. And, he's talking about Jessica
Mm-hmm.
being like,
Right.
saying that, you were to share my bed, a
Right.
lot of this would be solved, but I wouldn't even accept you,
Right. Right.
because a
Yeah.
leader has to look and be a particular way,
Wait. Right.
and Jessica's starting to recognize the strength in this man,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and the strength of these people, outside of being murderers,
Right.
you know, that there's an honesty
Uh-huh.
about them, that there is a there's a they are a test in and of
Mm-hmm.
themselves, and if you cannot pass the test of the Freeman, then can you consider yourself truly human?
Right.
It's a human test. No
Mm-hmm.
Harkonnen would ever be able to get this far. No mere Atreides will ever be able to get this
Mm-hmm.
far. You have to be able to truly see
Right.
what it is that these people are leaning
Right.
towards, what they're chasing after.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, they may have a dream, but they are not delusional.
Right.
They are operating from their reality.
Mm-hmm.
They are operating at the edge of the knife.
Mm-hmm.
And it has taught them well to such an extent that they can create their own paradise.
Right.
Even though it might not be for them or their children or their children's
Right.
children or their children's children's children, but they are creating that paradise.
Mm-hmm.
They can get there.
Mm-hmm.
They are doing it
Right.
because they are operating from no delusions, and that's why. And kind of like I said, contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
Paradoxically enough, that's where the magic is.
Mm-hmm.
The magic lies in the people who have accepted their reality to
Mm-hmm.
such an extent that it has led them to this position of
Mm-hmm.
power.
Mm-hmm.
The Harkonnens, the entire galaxy, they don't see that. They
Right.
write the Freemen off.
Right.
Like, they're just a wild, that they don't even know how many they are.
Right.
They just think there's a small
Yeah.
population.
Yeah.
But there's millions of these people, living completely invisible,
Right.
all out there, all behind this dream.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be later on. I
Oh
don't know
yeah.
if I'm ever going to get to it,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot in the
Right.
book. But there's like a part, like in the last book, when he talked about how, one of their sieges gets assaulted
Mm-hmm.
while all the fighting men, right, are out.
Mm-hmm.
One of their sieges gets assaulted, and it's just women and children, and that the women and the children put up such a fight
Mm-hmm.
that the women threw their own babies onto the blades, and fought these people tooth and nail.
Mm-hmm.
They sacrificed everything. They gave everything because they knew that that's the reality they were living in.
Mm-hmm.
Their children can't afford to truly be children. Their children have to know this as well.
Right.
Like I said, no one's innocent in a world like this that runs
Correct.
off the
Right.
Everyone is paying the cost.
Mm-hmm.
There's no innocence.
Mm-hmm.
The Freemen know this.
Yes. And they operate
And they
in that
operate
reality.
from that.
Correct. Right.
And they operate it as like they're going to be tomorrow, so they can sacrifice today.
Mm-hmm.
They're willing to sacrifice their own children at this moment. And I'm saying that's not something you want to attain towards.
Right.
But when they were back to that corner, they fought. They persevered from this reality.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to. It was forced, but they did.
Mm-hmm.
But their strength wasn't in that moment. Their strength
Right.
was being able to see past it. Past to such an extent that they were able to sacrifice their own children. They were able to keep going from that.
Mm-hmm.
What people can recover from that? We haven't recovered.
Right.
Slavery was, generations ago.
Mm-hmm.
Over a century ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't recovered.
Right.
And we, not to mention all of the, years of oppression and foolishness even before that.
Right.
Slavery went on for here in America, 200 years.
A little longer than that.
To
Yeah, because depending on which the date that you started,
Yeah.
and then that, so it's
Yeah.
a
a little like 250.
Yeah.
It's for a long time. For
Right.
a long time, we suffered under that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not even a full century out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because after slavery was sharecropping and all that other stuff,
Right.
and
And Jim Crow and all that stuff.
So
Right.
we've been living in the consequence
Mm-hmm.
of that.
Right.
But the way we're living now,
Mm-hmm.
you would think that slavery was 400 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We're so delusional.
Mm-hmm.
We're so ununified. and all these things. We have not accepted our reality.
That's right.
We have not accepted, what we're living under
Mm-hmm.
and how to solve it. We have not
Mm-hmm.
accepted that. We cannot risk our future. We can't even begin to fathom doing that
Right.
to try to win today. We
Mm-hmm.
can't do it. That's why we're still
That's why we're
still
right.
on this
Right.
treadmill
Right.
trying to win and trying to get to a day that you can never reach. That's the
Mm-hmm.
point. It's the future. It's always supposed.
Mm-hmm.
It's always this figment. It's the future. You're never going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
You only ever live in today. But we cannot give up our futures to try to create something that works for us today.
Right.
We can't do it.
Right.
But I look at the Freemen and how they operate,
Mm-hmm.
and this, able women who would sacrifice their own children,
Mm-hmm.
who will hold their child in battle.
Right. And fight.
They hold the child in
Right.
one arm and they hold a cries knife
Yeah,
in
Christ
another,
knife in another. Right.
knowing what's being risked.
Mm-hmm.
But they will do it all the same
Mm-hmm.
because they are fighting for today.
Right.
Today.
Mm-hmm.
There are no delusions amongst these people,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all connected with particular. When I
Yeah.
talked about faith,
Mm-hmm.
that people need they need a dream,
Right.
they need a faith, they
Mm-hmm.
need something that they can all get behind.
Mm-hmm.
But we've already chosen. Wow, this is our faith.
Mm-hmm.
The economy is really just a faith. Dollars don't have any true value,
Mm-hmm.
but other than what we say,
Right.
we all rally behind that. We're all rallying behind. We've made our choice.
Mm-hmm.
We've made our choice, and it's just a shame, really, because it constantly leads towards this. And so when I read about the Freemen,
Right. Yeah, we
this,
like the Freemen.
when I read
We like
about
them a
this,
lot.
I see, like I said, I see a lot of us in them,
Right.
but I see also a lot of what we're not,
Mm-hmm.
and what the Freemen have. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
Freemen aren't a perfect people by any stretch of the imagination,
Right.
but they are human.
Mm-hmm.
They're human, and even in Dune, in this book, where you're dealing with Harkonnens and Atreides and constant political battles
Mm-hmm.
and all of these things, it's refreshing to be amongst a people,
Mm-hmm.
who, even, in their struggles, even in all of this, retain a sense of humanity,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to such an extent that, they know that you need individuals. They have not surrendered their own identity
Right.
as a people, to this idea of people.
Right.
They still are themselves,
Mm-hmm.
but they're united because they've chosen it.
Right.
That's the power. That's why I said you have to choose it. You
Mm-hmm.
can't force anyone
Mm-hmm.
into it. You have to choose it.
Right.
And these people are able to be themselves, able to be individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And they choose leaders to preserve that individuality amongst them, but are still able to unite them behind the dream.
Right. And make no mistake, they are a united front.
Yeah.
They
So
are
it's
a
like,
united front.
so that's, so we've often talked about the fallacy of leadership.
Yeah.
And that people are so eager to be led.
Right.
And that, and how, leadership in our world
Mm-hmm.
often robs people of agency.
Right.
And it constantly leads back to this.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case.
Right. With the Freemen, yeah.
With the Freemen.
Right.
We've talked a long while about this. I'm just finish up on this. Just finish up. His words, the depth of their awareness, the fact that he spoke as much to her as to those who secretly listened, forced her to reevaluate him. He had stature, she thought. Where did he learn such inner balance? The law that demands our form of choosing a leader is just a law, Stilgar said, but it does not follow that justice is always the thing a people needs. What we truly need now is time to grow and prosper, to spread our force over our land. I don't even need to.
It's right there. Man.
How many times have
we
talked about that?
Right.
We talked
a lot of Freemen.
You have this constant drive for justice, but justice in this form constantly looks a particular way.
Right.
And that might not be what we need. We
Mm-hmm.
might need something else.
Right. Just say
it.
Yeah, just say it.
What is his ancestry, she wondered. Whence comes such breeding? She said, Stilgar, I underestimated you. Such was my suspicion, he said. Each of us apparently underestimated the other, she said. I should like an end to this, he said. I should like friendship with you, and trust. I should like that respect for each other which grows in the breast without demands for the huddlings of sex. I understand, she said.
Mm-hmm.
Do you trust me? I hear your sincerity. Among us, he said, the Sayadina, when they are not the formal leaders, hold a special place of honor. They teach. They maintain the strength of God here. He touched his breast. You know, I'm gonna end it there
Right.
because we've reached an hour. I took a real large tangent, but
It was a good one.
yeah, it was
Because
yeah.
it clarified, because when, at least for me, when I first read it,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was enamored with
Mm-hmm.
the Free because I saw so much of us, in the Freemen. And then, of course, there are points when,
Yeah.
I'm like, man, if we really did something like this,
Mm-hmm.
but so
But
yeah, so
yeah,
I could see why, you
yeah,
took the tangent
yeah,
to
took a
further.
tangent, but
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, there's a lot of resonance,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of rhythm between us and the Freemen, but
Right.
there is also like a lot of diverging points,
Right.
and it's mainly because of the world that we live
Living in, right.
in.
Correct.
But I look at I look at how Jessica responds to this and
Mm-hmm.
how just the things that he just did this casual offhand wisdom to this book that is just always there. You know, there's a lot in this particular part. Every chapter is something.
Right.
Every chapter is something. So yeah, read the book.
Right.
You know, but the big thing here that I really wanted to touch on, that which really stuck to me, I wrote it down. You know, is that prophecy moves in these people, and that in that nature versus nurture, a future is created.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of points in that particular chapter because I only read a little excerpt.
Right.
But what Paul in himself and his visions is growing because he's surrounded by the spice
Right.
that's constantly pushing his consciousness forward. And there's this question of, is he seeing the future, or is he
Creating
creating
the
the
future. Right.
future? You know, it's a bit of both. That the future was always there, but it never was what it was until he saw it. And in seeing it, he's solidified it.
Mm-hmm.
And since he's omnipresent, like I say,
Mm-hmm.
he's all of us in a sense, it becomes the future,
Right.
the one future.
Right.
And we are living in that,
Mm-hmm.
living out this future that he created,
Mm-hmm.
this reality that he created, and that he thinks he's created. This is where it is now. He thinks he created, in a sense, he did create it,
Mm-hmm.
but never forget who Paul
Mm-hmm.
is. He is all of us. Truly, his eyes are our eyes.
Right.
He is all of us. So when he says he created it,
Right.
it's actually we created it
Right.
because of all the things previously stated,
Mm-hmm.
because of the rampant inhumanity in our society, because we only, hearkening back to the final chapter of the first part, because we only know how to build from a place of conflict.
Mm-hmm.
We only know how to perceive and understand from a place of conflict. That's all we know how to build from. We are delusional.
Mm-hmm.
We think this makes us human. We think this makes us strong. As a matter of fact, our definition of humanity and this conflict is, irrevocably connected.
Right.
They're linked.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but the ideals of what a human is supposed to be, right? Of humanity, of
Mm-hmm.
this brotherhood and this peace, stand in contradiction to where that idea comes from this internal conflict,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And this dissonance makes the jihad the only conclusion. He has to struggle with that a lot
Mm-hmm.
because he doesn't really, he doesn't want this.
Right.
Who would want
Right.
this endless tide of death? He doesn't want it. But there is nothing else that can happen. What else can be done
Mm-hmm.
how else can you teach a people that only know how to learn one way?
That's right.
We know this.
Right.
That's why we try to justify it
Right.
in our plight against the white man.
Mm-hmm.
you know. But we
And
think
even
they're the
and
only ones who have.
right.
We all have to. This is the terrible cost.
Mm-hmm.
This is why, this is why I say that it doesn't have to be this way. You just have to just change your mind, change your perspective, and all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. Because when you don't, you are creating a reality.
Mm-hmm.
You are creating this pattern.
Mm-hmm.
You are lending yourself toward this jihad,
Right.
this constant, endless struggle,
Mm-hmm.
this battle, this conflict
Right.
that leads us only toward this one
Right.
place. So in conclusion, the biggest thing that I want us to take away from this, that
Mm-hmm.
I took away from this, in reading this, because I think, my journey through this, because it started at one place and ended somewhere else. And
Mm-hmm.
it goes that way every time I read the book, is that you can't you can't be delusional. You can't accept what's happening to us as normal.
Right.
You can't allow for this to become the reality.
Right.
You can't don't
Right. This
accept
violence and what's happening in the world, right? It may be common, but we know that it's not normal because we know how we respond
hmm
when these things happen. We feel a particular way. We get angry, so we know that
and
something is
yeah,
wrong.
the world makes that mentality
Mm-hmm.
very common.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it is delusional, like you said, to accept that as normal.
Right.
And if the Freemen are anything, and if we see a lot of rhythm between us, if there's one thing we can learn from the Freemen,
Mm-hmm.
is that just because you live a certain way doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that you allow that to make that what you are.
That's right. And I know you've heard that one
Yeah,
before,
the
right?
necessities of life, of living,
Uh-huh.
it is a terrible cost,
Uh-huh.
but you pay it to live.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
But once paying it becomes who you are, then that's all you are.
Right.
You are what you pay.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, we are what we give. We become a people of sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
All we are is what we've given.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to have something that you aren't willing to give.
That's right.
You have to have something that you aren't willing to surrender. And for them, it's this dream of a paradise.
Right.
You know, for their people
Mm-hmm.
that they can live in. You know, our dream is that we don't have one. We don't have a dream.
Mm-hmm.
We say that we want equality and stuff like that, that might be the dream.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at how we're living, when you look at all the things that we do,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and the fact that we're still having this conversation,
Right.
that's not our dream.
Right.
Our dream is a dream of like I said, like the slave versus the king. We're trying to solve the world for the king.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our dream is a dream of empires, a dream of conquerors.
Right.
It is a dream of
Mm-hmm.
defeating our enemies,
Mm-hmm.
showing them, that
We could do
that
this
we
too.
can do that,
Right.
that we can beat them.
Right. As a matter of fact, at one time we did, so we're trying to reclaim that.
Yeah, and
Right.
all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to learn that our ancestors had to learn.
Mm-hmm.
They were wrong. The world that they built was wrong
Mm-hmm.
because it was a world that once again tried to normalize brutality. You know, when there were warriors and people of the knife, even before all of this ever happened, then you
Mm-hmm.
know that there was a sunk cost fallacy even back then.
Right. But like I said,
But
whenever we talk about,
we don't
we
want to
look at
accept
that as
that.
culture, right?
Yeah, we look at that
As
as culture. We
culture,
don't
right?
want to accept
Mm-hmm.
that the lesson that we need to learn is a lesson that the pharaohs needed to learn.
Mm-hmm.
That the kings and queens, that Shaka and all others,
Mm-hmm.
they needed to learn this.
Mm-hmm.
We need to learn this.
Mm-hmm.
We all need to, because if we don't, then prophecy dies.
Mm-hmm.
The magic dies.
Mm-hmm.
And you are left with only one conclusion: jihad.
Yes.
This endless conflict,
Mm-hmm.
the endless war. And we say we don't want that,
it, right?
but we don't act like it.
Mm-hmm.
We just keep going. We keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
We keep trying to live in this because we haven't learned to fear
Mm-hmm.
what this world does to us.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't learned. We paid the price, but we haven't learned to fear paying it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't fear it.
Right.
We don't fear it,
Hmm.
and it leads us toward this. We think that gives us strength.
Right. That's another type of
You know,
delusion right there. Right.
we're delusional.
Hmm.
We keep playing out, we keep living out this passion play constantly, again and again, and it always leads us to this point.
Hmm.
To disillusionment, to anger, to unsatisfaction,
Right. To violence.
to violence. You know, so yeah, be more like the Freemen.
Right.
Be a people of dream, not of
Hmm.
delusion.
Hmm.
Operate from the reality that we're living
Right.
in. And for the love of God, learn to fear
Right.
it. So yes, that is
That's it for
that's
today.
in on
Right.
and on. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments. And thank
Thank,
you for hearing us out.
thank you.